listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are cheating on their partners deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do that are truly right for them. If you are dealing with an infidelity situation, I can help you sort it out, and you won't get any shame, blame, or judgments from me. I offer compassionate, confidential coaching via Zoom, so we can work together no matter where you're located. To schedule an introductory coaching session or to learn more about me and my work, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. Okay, we're trying something a little different today here, folks. I have my beloved canine, my dear dog, Seymour, in the room with me while I'm recording this episode. So if he starts talking, I'm probably just going to roll with it. Of course, if it gets too loud, I'm just going to have to turn this thing off and restart, but we'll see how it goes. Bear with us. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about something that comes up all the time in my coaching practice, which is the question of what it means to be, quote unquote, realistic about how much unhappiness or dissatisfaction it's reasonable to expect or to put up with in a relationship. Many clients come to me when they have been dissatisfied with their marriage or their primary relationship for a rather long time, and they're trying to figure out what to do about that. Since I specialize in helping people with situations that involve infidelity, the person who comes to me is often cheating or has been cheating on their spouse or their partner. But whether or not that is a factor, I always regard the client's unhappiness in their marriage as its own issue. If you're cheating on your partner and you're unsatisfied with your primary relationship, the two situations may be related to an extent, but they are also distinct. And so today we're going to talk about being dissatisfied in your marriage or your primary relationship as its own issue. Now, clients will often come to me and tell me all about how their marriage hasn't been working for them for a long time, or maybe they weren't even really sure that they wanted to get married in the first place, but they did. And they've gone to counseling with their spouse, and they've gone to therapy on their own, and they've read a bunch of books about relationships, and none of this stuff has been helpful. And they still have the same concerns or complaints they've always had about their relationship. And they don't really believe they're ever truly going to be happy unless they leave their marriage. But then they'll say something along the lines of, but maybe I'm just expecting too much. Or maybe I'm not being realistic. Or maybe this is just what any relationship would be like. And often people will tell me that they've talked to their married friends about their dissatisfaction in their marriage. And their married friends tell them things like, oh, that's just how marriage is. You may be unhappy, but you just have to accept it. And often people will tell me this as if they have already resigned themselves to this being true, as if they have already resigned themselves to the notion that their friends are right. People will tell me that after talking to friends who say things like this, they've started to think that maybe they can't possibly hope for anything better than being slightly miserable in their marriages. You know what I have to say about that? This is what I have to say about that. You do not have to settle for being slightly miserable in your marriage, or more than slightly miserable for that matter. Yes, it's true that many people do settle for this. Many people do not believe that it is possible to make significant changes in an unsatisfying relationship. And many people believe that it isn't really possible to get divorced or to leave an unsatisfying relationship. And when people believe these things are true, they become true for them. Our beliefs about what is possible determine what becomes possible for us in our lives. If we think that our only choice is to stay in a marriage we're unhappy in and stay unhappy in that marriage, then that will become our reality unless we begin to believe that we truly have other options. And you can believe you have other options, even if you currently do not think you do. That's why it can be so helpful to work with a coach. The coaching process helps us examine our beliefs about what is true, our beliefs about what is possible. And the coaching process shows us how our beliefs inform the choices we make in life, and thus the ways in which we actively create our own reality. And coaching gives us the tools to change our beliefs about what is possible, which is what we have to do if we're interested in having different experiences in life. If you want to make changes in your life, you have to change the way you think about yourself and the way you think about your life. It isn't just as simple as that, but it does start with that. I know there are some messages out there that suggest that if you just think differently, different things will happen. And so changing your mindset is all you have to do. But I'd say that's an oversimplification at best. You do have to take action to change your life, but the actions you take are influenced by what you believe is possible. And that's why it's so important to address your mindset in addition to taking action. And most of the time, it's so essential to address your mindset before you take action. So if you've been unhappy in your marriage for a while, your great opportunity is to decide that it is possible for things to change. That might sound simple to the point of being pointless, but this is actually a really important mental step. You must believe that change is possible and that you don't have to stay unhappy in your marriage, or that you don't have to stay in your marriage if you're unhappy. Let me say right now that if you want to be happier in your marriage, you can be. And devoting yourself to changing the way you approach your marriage or your relationship can bring about dramatic changes in how you experience that relationship. Contrary to much of what the romantic industrial complex might have to say, you don't need two people to change a relationship. When one person changes, the whole thing changes. It's kind of like a magic trick, except it really isn't. Your partner doesn't have to do anything differently in order for you to experience them in a completely different way, which is truly amazing. But although this is true, it does not mean that it is incumbent upon you to attempt to change a relationship that you have decided you would prefer not to be a part of anymore. I know this is, for some people, a pretty radical thing to consider, but you are allowed at any point to decide that you do not want to be romantically partnered with your spouse anymore. You are allowed to decide that the two of you have had a pretty good time of things, but now you're done. Or maybe you didn't really have all that great of a time of things at all, and now you're ready to cut your losses and move on. It's okay for you to decide that your marriage was a season and that season is coming to a conclusion. And that's okay. Seasons change. It's natural to transition in nature from one season to a next. And you can decide that that is true for major aspects of your life as well, including but not limited to your marriage. However, in order for you to make these kinds of decisions, you may need to adjust your thinking about marriage in general and your marriage in particular. You may need to do a lot of deliberate work to embrace the possibility that it is okay for a marriage to end by choice, and not because one party died or there was extreme abuse or neglect or something along those lines. You may need to do some very concerted, deliberate work to allow yourself to believe that it might be sad for a marriage to end, but that doesn't have to mean that it is bad for a marriage to end. You may have to consider allowing yourself to change a lot of your current beliefs about your relationship, about what you owe your relationship, and about what's possible for you, both within and beyond your current relationship. For many people, deciding to leave a marriage or a committed partnership is a major life event. And major life events are always a great opportunity for us to take a close look at our old ways of thinking and decide whether or not they are serving us anymore. Okay, you may be thinking that all of this is very interesting, but how do I actually determine how much dissatisfaction is too much dissatisfaction in my marriage? And at what point do I decide that my happiness has crossed, at what point do I decide that my unhappiness has crossed the threshold from a reasonable amount of unhappiness to an unreasonable amount of unhappiness? These are excellent questions, and I will address them momentarily. But first, let me say this. I am the first person who will tell you that expecting a romantic relationship to be awesome all of the time is not a great idea. Yes, you can actively strive to make your relationship as awesome as possible, and that is a wonderful thing to put deliberate energy into doing. But even so, humans are humans. And therefore, it is extremely likely that even if your relationship is pretty great overall, it is not going to be amazing all the time. In fact, it is entirely likely that your romantic relationship will drive you nuts at times, and your partner will drive you crazy at times. I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but I will never get tired of telling it. I once found a tacky sign in a souvenir shop. Actually, this was right before I was going to attend a wedding that said, marriage is all about finding that one special person you want to annoy for the rest of your life. And I thought that was hilarious. And I thought it sounded just about right. But I actually think it is far more appropriate to say that marriage is all about finding that one special person who you want to be annoyed by for the rest of your life. And I mean for this to be funny, of course, but I am also completely serious. Being intimately involved with another human on a day-to-day basis for months or years or decades or even karmic lifetimes is an amazing experience. Sometimes it's amazingly great, and sometimes it's amazingly not great. When our lives are intertwined with another person's, we often get to experience that person at their best, or at least we have the chance to experience that person at their best. And we also get to experience them when they are not at their best. And the reverse is true too, of course. They get to experience the best of us, most likely, hopefully. And they also probably get to experience a lot of the very unbest of us. And if we are up for this adventure and everything that this adventure entails, it can be such a profound honor to go through life with someone and to be willing to both enjoy them and tolerate them when you would really rather throw them out the window, and to receive the grace of being tolerated by them when you are in the throes of the more difficult aspects of the human experience. And of course, it's also wonderful to experience the highs of connection in addition to being okay with the lows and willing to accept the difficulties and being partnered with someone with reasonably good humor. It can be a cosmic delight to annoy and be annoyed by someone and to still feel love for that person and for yourself amidst it all. So sometimes when people think, actually, let me say this first. Many of us don't go into marriage with that kind of an attitude. Many of us don't go into relationships with that kind of an attitude. Many of us go in with the idea of like, if this isn't great, if this isn't getting me what I want, then this is shit. Like I'm out of here if this isn't good. And, I am all for getting what you want. That's not, I'm not trying to call that out as a problem, but I do think that part of getting what we want in relationships comes with embracing the fact that we may also get some other things with what we want. But a lot of people don't think about marriage that way. So sometimes people come to me and they think they are at the end of the road with their marriage. But then we start working together and they start to look at their marriage and themselves and their life and their partner in a completely different way. And they realize, wait a second, this relationship is actually a really beautiful thing. And all of that stuff I was all bent out of shape about isn't really a problem in the way that I thought it was. And oh my God, here's this wonderful human and we have this wonderful connection and this is so great. And I just didn't see things in this way before. And when this happens, this can be a really wonderful outcome. However, although I believe it is really important to recognize that part of the richness of long-term committed relationships can come from being willing to love your partner, even when you aren't 100% thrilled with them. And even though I truly believe that it is really important to recognize that even the best relationships have their challenges, their periods of disconnection, and perhaps even areas of permanent friction, that does not mean that it is incumbent upon you to ignore your dissatisfaction with your relationship if you are dissatisfied. And in addition, you are not obligated to stay in a relationship that you are unhappy in. Just because it's true that no relationship is perfect doesn't mean that you have to swallow or ignore your own dissatisfaction. Sometimes it is totally worth it to make peace with things we're dissatisfied with, to ride out periods of strife, and to learn how to look at our dissatisfaction in a new way, potentially in a way that transforms our dissatisfaction into something else. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes dissatisfaction is an indication that we are doing things that we truly don't want to be doing, and it is time for a course correction. So if you take one point away from this podcast episode, let it be this. It is worth taking your dissatisfaction with your relationship seriously. It is worth examining your dissatisfaction. And I can help you do it. You don't have to do it alone. It's one thing to hear that you don't have to ignore your dissatisfaction in your relationship. You don't have to avoid your dissatisfaction in your relationship. But it's another thing to know what to do with it. And that is what I'm here for. There are ways that you can systematically approach your dissatisfaction in your marriage and make sense of it step by step, piece by piece, without being terrified of the potential outcomes. A lot of people are afraid that looking hard at their dissatisfaction in their marriage might lead to divorce. And that's a really scary possibility for a lot of people. But here's the thing. You can learn how to work with that fear instead of letting it stop you in your tracks. But number two, it's also possible that examining and acknowledging your dissatisfaction in your marriage won't lead to divorce. And of course, even if it does lead to divorce, that doesn't have to be a terrible thing. It certainly might be a sad thing or a disruptive thing or a challenging thing, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Okay, so to return to the question that I raised a few minutes back, I said that some people ask me how they know whether or not they're experiencing a reasonable amount of unhappiness in their marriage, knowing that no relationship is perfect, or if what they're dealing with is an unreasonable or intolerable amount of unhappiness in their marriage. Guess what? Everyone has to answer that question for themselves. I can help you answer it, but ultimately, the only person who can make the final decision on that is you. I want to suggest that the way we can begin to get clarity on that question is to start to identify or re-identify what's most important to you in a romantic partnership and in your life as a whole. Let's face it, people, for many of us, just getting through the day-to-day business of life is a pretty major accomplishment. And therefore, it can be really easy for months or years or decades or even lifetimes to go by without periodically checking in with ourselves and asking ourselves what we really want. And on top of that, it's hard for many of us to give ourselves permission to identify what we really want, and even harder to give ourselves permission to actually go after it. So, finding yourself in the position of being fairly or extremely dissatisfied in your marriage can be an excellent opportunity to step back and radically reassess what's important to you in all areas of your life, including but not limited to your marriage. And yes, this may be a significant project, but that is not a bad thing. But for the sake of offering you something really specific to work with right now, here's what I'd like you to do. If you have been unsatisfied in your marriage and you're trying to figure out what to do with that, I offer you 2 questions that you can start to ask yourself today. Question number 1, what do I think I have been compromising on in my marriage that I don't want to compromise on? I'll repeat that. What do I think I have been compromising on in my marriage that I don't want to compromise on? And question number 2, why do I not want to compromise on this particular thing or these particular things? I'll repeat that one too. Why do I not want to compromise on this particular thing or these particular things? Let me give you an example that comes up pretty regularly. Many times, people will tell me that they have been really dissatisfied with their sex life in their marriage for a long time. Maybe they haven't been having sex with their partner at all, or maybe they've been having sex far less frequently than they would like to, or maybe they're not having the kind of sex they want to have, or maybe there's very little physical intimacy outside of fairly perfunctory intercourse or something along those lines. Whatever it is, there's dissatisfaction with the sex life. People will tell me this, and they'll tell me about how important it is for them to have a rich and satisfying sensual and sexual connection with their partner, no matter who their partner is. They'll tell me how much they like sex or how much they like a certain flavor of sex or whatever. And just to make this really clear, they'll spell out that sex is something they really enjoy in life and consider a really important component of a romantic relationship. And then maybe in our next coaching session, or maybe even in their next breath, they'll say something like, but I don't want to wake up 5 or 10 or 15 years from now and realize that I was just thinking with my dick. And I said that because a lot of people who happen to have dicks do say this, but plenty of other people with other external genitalia say something like this too. For instance, women often say, I don't want to throw away my marriage just because our sex life is terrible. Or I don't want to leave the marriage just because I want to fuck or because I want to fully express my sexuality or something along those lines. Now, here's the thing. If you are consciously willing to compromise in the realm of sexuality because it is worth it to you for reasons that you have consciously decided are good reasons for you, that's one thing, and that's fine. That is a choice that you might feel really comfortable making. But if you have a clear desire for a sex life that isn't happening within the context of your marriage, that is worth taking seriously. Put a little differently, when people tell me things like, I don't want to wake up 5 years from now only to realize I was just thinking with my dick, or an analogous version of that statement. I'm not trying to privilege the experience of people who have penises. I often ask people, well, do you want to go another 5 years or 10 years or however long without having the kind of sex life you want to have? If your sex life is important to you, it's important to you. And it's okay to make that one of your priorities. You do not have to discount your desires, whether they are for a more fulfilling sex life or anything else. Maybe for you, it isn't about sex at all, but you really want someone who loves bird watching as much as you do. Or you really want to be with someone who wants to travel the world instead of staying at home and watching TV. Or you want someone to ride a motorcycle with, or you want someone who, is as passionate about knitting as you are, or whatever it is. Sex is certainly important to a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons why I use this example here. But there are plenty of other things that could be really, really, really important to you in partnership also. And by the way, often when people tell me that they're afraid they'll walk away from their marriage and realize later that they only did so because they were focusing on their sex life, they have usually already told me many other ways in which their marriage wasn't working for them for quite some time. So this is why it's so important to be willing to be comprehensively honest with ourselves about what we are dissatisfied with in our marriage if we are indeed dissatisfied. Life may be full of compromises, but there is a difference between making compromises that we willingly choose to make for reasons we feel good about and making compromises that we believe we have to make, or making compromises for reasons we do not like. Okay. I know it can be hard to sort through all this stuff on your own. I know it can be hard to figure out which compromises we're truly okay with making and which ones we really aren't okay with making. And these are the kinds of things I can help you figure out. If you would like to work with me to sort out your relationship challenges, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I look forward to speaking with you. All right, everyone, that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have enjoyed what you've heard, I would love it if you would head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. Have a great week, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.